everyone. You are listening to the first episode of the Broke Girls Guide to Cars podcast. And tonight I'll be talking about Uber's Xchange leasing program. Now, the interesting thing about Uber is it's a great way to pick up extra cash if you have your own car. You don't necessarily make a lot of money, but it's not a bad side gig. The problem is there's been a ton of turnover at Uber, and so now they're going after a different population. They're going after people who don't have cars of their own. It doesn't make sense on the outset, but check this out. So anyway, their leasing program is a short-term lease. And unlike a conventional lease where you pay a monthly payment plus tax, under Uber's Xchange leasing program, you pay weekly. That means those suckers are charging you anywhere from $150 to $200 a week on what is typically a compact car. Now, that may sound good if you are in desperate need of a car and in desperate need of some cash. But let's go through this for a minute because it's really not the good deal that Uber wants us to think it is. Okay, so besides the weekly lease payment, if you have a bad week and don't necessarily clear a lot of money after Uber takes their share out, and if you're carrying a balance, so let's say you need to earn at least $200 a week from Uber in order to cover Uber's fees that they deduct as well as your lease payment. So you set a goal for $200 a week. Well, if you have a bad week and only end up making $100, they're going to deduct $100 out of your pay toward the lease payment in addition to any of their fees. So you're looking at a balance of at least $100 that's going to carry over to the following week. So you start the following week $100 in the hole. And then if that week is bad as well, it carries over into the following week. So you're looking at 3 weeks of being in the hole with whichever balance carried over, the $100 in addition to the balance from your second bad week. And typically what happens is drivers get themselves into such a deep hole that they have no choice but to walk away, which in turn is going to thrash their credit rating. In fact, on my blog, I did a post on it. And sure enough, I got a comment from a gentleman who is in this program, in the Xchange leasing program. He is already $183 in the hole, and he has no means to recoup that. He can't necessarily pay that to Xchange leasing. So he was asking me, what recourse do I have? What can I do? Unfortunately, I couldn't offer him any input other than to look over the lease agreement. Now, you might be thinking, you know what, it's still not a bad way to go. I need a car. I need a side gig. I need cash. And I totally respect that. Look, I understand, believe me. I'm also scrounging for side gigs. So if you still want to move forward with this, I do have a word of caution. Sit down and go through their 28-page lease agreement very carefully, because then it outlines what recourse you do have if you do have to give up the car, exactly how much you'll have to pay. Now, their website says you just have to pay a $250 deposit, and bam, the car is yours to use for Uber and personal use too. And you have the option of turning it in within 30 days for a $250 disposition fee plus any balance you may owe. And that's the tricky part. That's the part that's going to really nail a lot of people. And the tough part about this whole thing is it's very much like predatory lending. Predatory lending practices unfairly target consumers who either have very poor credit or no credit. And this is very similar to a buy here, pay here dealership, whereby the customer makes weekly payments instead of monthly payments. And Uber knows where this car is going to be at all times. They have a GPS on the car anyway, to track your driving activity, but also to track where the car is in case you do fall behind. And there have been accounts of drivers actually leaving notes on their car saying, hey, Uber, come pick this thing up. I'm over it. I'm done. So with all that in mind, if you still want to move forward and do this, and I don't recommend it, please do so with a lot of caution. Read that 28-page lease agreement very carefully. Know what your rights are. And who knows, you may come out ahead. You may pick up some cash. I get it. The holidays are around the corner. There's bills to be paid. You want to get presents for your family, maybe take off out of town for a couple days. It's very easy to fall into this trap, and, please don't do it. There are other ways to pick up cash. There are other side gigs. And as I come across them in my search for a seasonal side gig, I'll be sure and leave them on my blog. So that's it. That wraps up my first episode of the Broke Girls Guide to Cars podcast. When you have a chance, head over to my blog at The Broke Girls Guide to Cars. Follow me on Facebook at The Broke Girls Guide to Cars, on Twitter and Instagram at Elaine Loves Cars, and of course, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week with more real-life car advice for people on a budget.